I know next to nothing about what. Should we be excited about Commando and the pod racer? As you said, they basically did the work to make sure that stretching out the screen wouldn't destroy all our eyeballs.
Greetings and welcome. This is Nexus Gaming News for Tuesday, September 14th. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, here as always with Kyle Ferguson. Hey, Kyle.
Hi.
We'll be kicking off the show today with the major headlines from Sony before getting to our main story. Because at the end of last week, Sony held the PlayStation Showcase, announcing a plethora of new Marvel games, as well as our first official look at God of War Ragnarok. The sequel to 2018's soft reboot God of War was revealed with a gameplay trailer. In it, we see that Kratos and Atreus are returning to Midgard, and the story appears to be focusing on Atreus coming to terms with his heritage. Freya is returning and not looking too happy, if you've seen the trailer, as well as a teased look at the game's new villain, Thor. God of War Ragnarok had already been officially delayed until 2022, and while the trailer did not reaffirm a 2022 release window, the game's official blog post reads, and I quote, "See you next year."
There was also Spider-Man 2, the sequel to 1, and Miles Morales was announced with a gameplay trailer as well, the big reveal at the end being Venom, taking the fight to both Peter Parker and Miles. New Insomniac game, Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, will release in 2023.
Yeah, going to be a bit of a wait for that one. I'm impatient. I love Insomniac Spider-Man games. However, Insomniac was not done there. A vague cinematic trailer showing the aftermath of a violent barroom brawl eventually ended on a close-up of 3 claws extending from the only man left sitting at the bar, which, of course, was announcing that Insomniac is at work on a Wolverine game with no release date in sight. They're keeping this one close to the vest.
There was also many other remasters announced. They were showcasing Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy with a PC debut, which kind of seems to be the pipeline they're going with, maybe to compete with Microsoft, and then a remaster of Alan Wake due in October.
Yeah, a lot of eyes back on that game after the success of Control, which is from the same studio.
Okay.
Now, Kyle, I know there is absolutely no universe where you are excited for this, but I, for one, cannot freaking wait for Gran Turismo 7, and it looks like I will not have to wait much longer, as not only did we get a new trailer, Gran Turismo 7 will release on March 4th of next year. If you look at the website, it says planned release date on March 4th, giving themselves that wiggle room.
The cars are shiny, and I respect that.
Yeah, my favorite shot in the whole damn thing was what I thought was showing off the environment, and it was actually showing off the reflections of the environment as the shot like pulls out on a super glossy freaking car hood. It was ridiculous. It was a nice little flex. So, anyways, our main story today, though, is the announcement of a remake of a game I have never played, and one that is near and dear to your heart, Kyle. We're, of course, talking about Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, the remake. Now, this is the just announced remake of the beloved BioWare RPG. Now, it is not being handled by BioWare or EA. Aspyr, which I think is the way to pronounce it, recently having remastered Star Wars Republic Commandos for the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch, is the studio at the helm of this remake. And remake is a key term here, Kyle, because Aspyr is known for remasters.
Is interesting. So my best mental picture of this game right now is Final Fantasy VII. It is going to be taking a turn-based real-time RPG. What that basically means is it was an evolution of the Baldur's Gate kind of BioWare system that had come before, which was pause when you need to, but otherwise D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, 2nd edition, or in this case it was 3rd edition, is being played in the background. That is likely to go away.
Yeah, well, and we're having to make those assumptions because the official trailer shows no gameplay at all. It's just a cinematic of Revan in a dark room looking super cool.
who is cool. I mean, his mask looks like a spaceship. It's always been a little visually confusing for me, but a cool mask nonetheless. And
I like the Revan mask.
Yeah, and he came up quite a bit in the Knights of the Old Republic, or the Old Republic MMO. They did a big Revan thing there. So when I originally saw this rolling, I figured, what, the MMO's up to something again?
Yeah, for a hot second, I thought the same. So, but that being said, so since there's no actual gameplay on display, that we're really just having to read into the moniker of remake. And it's also worth mentioning too that, you know, while the trailer itself debuted at Sony's own event, this KOTOR remake is going to launch on PC on the same day as the PS5 version. And as far as other consoles are concerned, the KOTOR remake is only a timed exclusive for PlayStation. So we will see it come to other consoles after some unspecific period of time. They haven't said how long it's going to be a timed exclusive. But getting back to our expectations of it, as I mentioned, like Aspyr has only handled remasters up until this point, and also ports. They did the iOS port of the original Knights of the Old Republic, as well as BioWare's other OG Xbox RPG, Jade Empire. And like more recently, the remasters, like they did the old N64 pod racing game, very recently put out Republic Commandos. They're very, very bare bones remasters. The graphics are updated to what I would describe as a bare minimum, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't personally make me excited. You know, for purists out there, it's probably a really good thing. So when I saw this, yeah, I was kind of conflating remake and remaster in my head. I didn't get particularly excited because I'm like, well, it's Aspyr. Okay, they're going to do their thing, which is kind of just slightly improving the resolution of the graphics and making it work like for a proper widescreen, and that'll probably be all they do. But they've been making a much bigger deal about the fact that it's a remake, and in fact, the official blog post announcing the remake says that Aspyr is, quote, rebuilding the game from the ground up.
With your beloved characters, and they're really focusing on the story. Anytime anybody talks about this game right now in some sort of press release, an interview on GameSpot, they're basically just story all the time. The gameplay is, I feel like, very likely to gonna go down that RPG action sort of style, like we saw in something more recent, such as what was the most recent one there with all the puzzle games? It was basically a Tomb Raider game mixed with Dark Souls.
Tomb Raider game mixed with Dark Souls? What are you talking about?
The red-haired Jedi that we recently got.
Oh, you're talking about a Star Wars game. Oh, yeah. Fallen Order.
Order. You know, the names tend to blend together a little bit.
They do. I really enjoyed that game. And I can never recall the title of it quickly from memory. I'm just like, dude from Shameless is a Jedi. That actor was in Shameless, if you haven't seen it.
I've got my own fears with this because I love the game. And I want to make sure I talk about my personal take on this before we get to the drama, which of course Star Wars fans are famous for. And it's always, as per usual, unsavory with Star Wars fans. This is a beloved game for me. It is a time period. It's full of nostalgia. It's a very unique experience. And being able to pause it, being able to craft my character with the pre-made faces. We're not even talking like pre-made hairdo on top of pre-made face. You had like 8 looks that you chose from, and that was going to be it. But it was also fully voice acted for the time. And granted, you know, when you spoke to aliens, I remember Taz Chico, and then that would repeat over and over and over again. So they had their wiggle rooms, right? It was subtitled. When you talk to aliens, they had like 7, maybe 7 lines of alien dialogue that they would repeat over and over again. But hey, you know, it filled the void, and they didn't have to make up a language. They're not writing Tolkien here. It was a great game, though. And to move away from what feels like their RPG roots and that undersystem of Dungeons and Dragons is not particularly interesting to me. In fact,
here's the thing. All of that is hearsay. We don't actually know how far they're moving away from it, if they're moving away from it at all. There's no actual official statement saying that they're becoming an action RPG. We're going off the words of podcasters claiming to have inside sources.
Very true. Very true. There's some exciting things about it too, though. Like, this is a long line program of remasters, and now with this remake that has been involved with LucasArts. And LucasArts oversees a lot of the games and makes sure that some of these anyway.
I'm going to push up my glasses. It's Lucasfilm Games now. LucasArts was dissolved when Disney took over.
Of course. All terribly different. However, the credited, or at least what people theorize to be the credited person who is going to oversee as producer, is also the producer of The Mandalorian. And so people have gotten themselves a little excited in some ways in that the Revan storyline will be canonized and placed into the actual timeline in a functioning way, which is very exciting post Mandalorian.
I legitimately want to hear someone explain why they would be excited for that.
Well, I have,
because without getting in. Oh, okay. Real quick though, because without getting too deep into it, as someone who hasn't played through it myself, the canon differs depending on how you play through the game. So why would you want them to specify only one way that it happened?
Well, you've played video games no matter what they are. Sometimes the decision you make at the end kind of gets glossed over in the sequels and doesn't truly matter.
Well, I mean, I was going to not go with sequels and say you're talking about the Mass Effect 3 effect.
Perhaps. They're all the same ending.
It's more about the ending than
exactly.
it is the sequels.
However, I will remain spoiler-free for those who have not experienced KOTOR and just kind of do the backstory here. That would be exciting with a Mandalorian tie-in. Revan and Malak, the Dark Lords, the Darths of this game, quit the Jedi Order because of the Mandalorian Wars. And in fact, there's a subplot throughout this entire game that's a little wishy-washy at time about Mandalorians and the Mandalorian Wars. In fact, one of your party members is an ex-Mandalorian now chilling with his helmet off. So that began a lot of the lore that was eventually established further in things like the cartoon series that ran with those ideas. KOTOR established a huge amount of activity in that ancient timeline, or timeline of the past anyway, the Old Republic. It also brought forth many of the lightsaber colors that became cooler for other Jedi as we go on. Like, this game established so much about what people expected of a Star Wars game. And frankly, for the time period, the writing was incredible, and the voice acting was, at the worst, ignorable.
That's okay. That's fair. I mean, yeah, it is an older game. My brain is just absolute guarded. Like, my guard is 100% up as someone who doesn't really have any nostalgia for KOTOR, because I have barely scratched the surface of it. I have only ever touched the iPad port of KOTOR.
Sounds
I did
awful.
not have an Xbox back in the day, and I didn't have my own PC when it originally released. I was late to having my own PC powerful enough to play games, and by the time I got one, I jumped straight into World of Warcraft, and that kind of was my PC life for a very long time. So I just have basically no experience with KOTOR outside of the iOS port, which, from what I understand, is extremely faithful and is basically just a one-to-one port. It is what it is. But I'm guarded just because it is Aspyr. They haven't, to my knowledge, made anything to this level. If they are hoping to essentially build a new game from scratch, with the undercurrents of KOTOR's original story, that is not something that this studio has done. I have nothing to compare it to from their past body of work to make me know if it's going to be a quality product or not. It's basically where my brain's at.
There's no arguing with that. And what fans have globbed onto is more the writing and the writers. And in particular, they've all become rather upset about one Sam Maggs,
some very specific people are very mad about it.
Of course. Well, we're talking about Star Wars fans here. There's people who digest everything and love it. There's people who...
There are Star Wars fans who like to think that they speak for the entire fandom, when in reality, they just speak for their particular clique within the fandom.
I mean, they just want to be mad for fun. However, this is particularly grasping at straws because we don't actually know what the writing team is, and if this is going to be a faithful remake, at least in terms of volume to experience and not a cutting down of story. In fact, with Final Fantasy VII, we saw an increase of story to such a degree that it was volume 1 of a multiple series for a single game. There's likely many writers on this project.
Yeah. And we don't know how much they will be either rewriting or expanding upon. My hunch is there's going to be a major expansion upon the vaguer intricacies of everything involving Mandalore. If someone from the Mandalorian is involved, and there is a desire to tie this into the greater narrative that is playing out in that extremely popular show, that's where my brain goes. But again, they haven't specified. We don't know. And obviously, they're not going to announce, we're retconning this, that, and the other. It's happening. Like, they don't do a feature list and mention, quote unquote, retcons as something to promote. So another interesting aspect of this, Kyle, is the fact that Aspyr has no known ties to EA really at all. And the really only ties they have to BioWare is the fact that they've ported past BioWare games to iOS.
I know next to nothing about why. Should we be excited about Commando and the pod racer? As you said, they basically did the work to make sure that stretching out the screen wouldn't destroy all our eyeballs.
That's the thing. It depends, I think, on the type of old school gamer you are. I am definitely the type that gets way more excited about remakes than I do remasters, and I definitely get the least amount of excited for remasters that basically look like barely visual updates to the graphics as they were when the game originally released. I like it from an ease of revisiting the game standpoint, from a video game kind of archivist standpoint. I like it. I like that, but personally, I have basically no desire to go and revisit an old game that has barely been retouched in a remaster. So when I look at Aspyr's remasters of things like the pod racing game, which I loved, and the Republic Commando game, which I missed because, again, I think it was an Xbox exclusive when it came out. I could be wrong on that. I vaguely remember it coming out, and for some reason I missed it, but it's not a game that I personally have a lot of nostalgia for. I know a lot of people do, and I know it was a very well-reviewed game when it originally, was released. But if you're the type that really enjoys revisiting old games or experiencing old games in a very close original form, then I think you will be excited for that. But again, that's where my division begins with the KOTOR remake, because they're not saying it's a remaster, and they're making a very big deal about the fact that they are rebuilding it. And so, yeah, it's like, I just don't know how hyped to be, because for me, Knights of the Old Republic is a game, like, it is probably number one on my wall of shame of games I haven't played. Like, I struggle to think of a game I haven't played that is higher on my list. Final Fantasy VII is probably up there, but I don't really like Final Fantasy. I love Star Wars. Like, I absolutely love Star Wars. So having not played Knights of the Old Republic and having spent a lot of time with the MMO, it's always something I've wanted to go back and revisit. I have tried to revisit, which is the whole reason I tried the iOS port. But it was just too old. Like, I was just like, all right. I know enough of this through osmosis, through being good friends with you, that kind of going through this old, what I see as dated gaming experience, it wasn't enough to keep me going. And so I want to be excited for this, but I don't know. Aspyr has to prove it to me that they can, like, really pull out all the stops on this remake and make it something really new and fresh and exciting. For me, this is me talking. I'm not saying it's something they have to do. I'm sure whatever product they end up with, there will be an audience for it. But that's where I land.
It is a product of its time, 100%. There are a lot of interrupts to the gameplay that perhaps modern RPG fans will not agree with. I mean, we've come from a post-Diablo 3 universe, and even before then, BioShock. This whole idea that you pick up a scroll, you pick up a book, you pick up an audio player, and the story's told to you while you continue to play. These are full-blown stops, camera 1, camera 2 kind of storytelling. While it may have been fully voice acted at the time, which is incredible, that is not a particular note these days. It's not something we all excitedly tell our friends. Did you know they actually read the words aloud? Oh my goodness. It was slow. It was a slow burn. You told me you never made it off the first planet. I understand. I also understand anybody who played the first Mass Effect got to the Citadel and said, well, hey now, I thought we were shooting guns and then running across planets and having a good time. What's all this? You want me to go talk to people? It is basically that. It is a puzzle game in its limitations. And that's the crazy thing that a lot of people are going to experience going back from things like Mass Effect and saying, hey, whoa, I've heard about this game Kotor made by BioWare. This was supposedly even their heyday before this. Let's go back in time. I've played Dragon Age. I know what these sort of under-system D&D games are going to play like with a little bit of pausing. Let's do it. And they hit KOTOR, and one thing they realize is that it's a puzzle game to even have a relationship. You enter the code. You're cracking the safe as you go. Response 1. Oh, we didn't like that response. There's no faces on the side that show happy, sad. You know, you could read, how's your day? And your character's like, how's your day? And they're like, whoa, back off. And you're like, wait a minute, what was the undertone there? Your character isn't voice acted. You don't even know how you're delivering lines when you speak to people and select your options sometime. So you're like, oh man, I kind of want to, get a relationship with Cartho Nassi. So, turn. Oh, he didn't like that. Let me reload. Oh, let's try this other one. Oh, he didn't like that. And it'll take from point 1 in a hidden reputation system all the way to the end of the game doing the exact right thing to get a kiss. Compared to BioWare games as they currently now, where basically everybody loves you from the second you show up.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you call it a puzzle, because I would just call that like infuriating design, like system design,
or
like
replayability. Like this is kind of that arcadiness that still existed in 2003. Like you had this game, it was your Christmas gift. It had to last you a full year, and there was a full year of content in here to replay through it, see how things would change, what order you did the planets in, and all that sort of thing. I don't think a modern audience necessarily has the patience for that sort of thing, and I certainly don't think they have patience for this combat style.
That's interesting. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think it was so much the combat that kind of turned me off when I tried to revisit it much after the fact. But I think it was the fact that it was just an overall pacing issue. Like you were saying, that first planet it drags, to say the least, much the same way that the Mass Effect Citadel does. It's funny too, though, I've replayed Mass Effect more than once, and I get through the Citadel much faster. So much of it was just the fact I didn't know where the heck to go the first time I played that game. And that too, I would point to and say it's kind of an infuriating system design. Like they just didn't have the navigation of that game in that first Mass Effect. I didn't think it was particularly well designed, and I think it was a challenge too in BioWare's older games.
Now, I feel like I've harped too much on this game now in order to agree with you, perhaps, but the game is incredible. It's got an amazing storyline. I love it. Just to throw it out there, I loved M. Night Shyamalan's The Village when I saw it in theaters. I'm a gullible man. Okay, so there are beats in this story that blew me away at it's the tender age of what would even 15? Yeah, there's some nostalgia, and there's just some lack of experience with a good story, of which I believe this was. I love the turn-based combat. I loved what it allowed for. I loved all the talking, the choices. The party system was restrictive because you always had to have somebody who could open locked doors, for instance. There's a lot of really old things in here that could easily be phased out. So the fact that
Go ahead.
The fact that they're focusing on the beloved story is a really good thing, because that truly is what's going to happen. And I mean, here they even confirmed that Jennifer Hale's coming back, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, which makes me go, okay, they must be either rewriting or expanding upon existing story arcs if we're bringing back in famous known voice actors. But two, like to come back again to like whether you should be excited or not for this game, I do think a little bit of it is also unfair, just because of the pre-existing history of this game. Because in any other world, Kyle, where you go to me and you say, hey, there's a a Mass Effect-esque Star Wars game coming out. Are you excited about that? Answer is absolutely yes. Immediately, I go, yes, I would play that. I would play that game. But because it's Knights of the Old Republic, and because it's a studio that up until this point has made what I see as extremely faithful, I think to its detriment, remasters of old games, it's something I just sit here and go, I need a reason to trust this product.
It's an unknown studio. This is happening a lot right now. And I think a lot of it is just due to the ever-changing marketplace. There's video game studios failing, succeeding, and many of them are moving online and away from more of a brick and mortar system. All I can do is say I hope that it's good, because I would love for people to experience what I went through. However, that is also slightly tied to the slog. You know, I had an experience. I read the whole book. Look at these 7 Harry Potter books and look how I read them all. Like, it's not only just the fact that it was perhaps a story you enjoyed. It came at the right time for you. It was hard work to get through this whole game. And if they make it easier for you, I'm a little sad about that. I want you to put in the work for a good story.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm also hoping it's good. I really like Star Wars. This is something I feel I so tragically missed out on that I would have absolutely eaten it up had it been something that I played when it was current. So I'm here's hoping, even though I know the big twist. And I can't imagine that's going to be something that they lean too far away from with any possible rewrites.
Kind of weird.
It would be
at this point, right?
It would be bedlam, right? It'd be like fires in the streets.
I mean, it's the twist that everybody knows that we won't say, but like it's a weird, it's weird ground to tread on for sure. I do not envy the writers who have to make that decision as to how they're going to retwist the twist, change anything in that first place. But I mean, also sensibilities have changed. What we expect from a game has changed, and how we interact with other characters has changed a lot. Like, for instance, dark side, light side. We, in this game, you want to cast some Force Lightning? Well, the mana cost of it depends how many dark side points you have. So at one point, you might choose to not give tickets to a freighter leaving a planet that is under attack to some refugees, because you need more points in your horrible dark side so you can cast more lightnings.
So the ability to cast it is not linked to light or dark, it's just how efficient it is?
Right. If you were a light side, you can still cast lightning, but it's so horribly expensive that you wouldn't even bother to do it, and your damage, I believe, would be lower. So you might choose, hey, later on in the game here, I could really use some Force Lightning, so I'm going to go into the streets and I'm going to do some horrible things to build up some of that rep.
I would say in a certain way, I didn't know that. In a certain way, that actually kind of makes me happy, because I didn't like in Mass Effect that I was locked out of certain things if I didn't just go whole hog one way or the other.
Well, you can still cast a heal if you're dark side, but it's just very tiny. It's very bad, very, very bad. Right. So like I've really yet to come across any game that has any sort of alignment system that I think does the gray area well. Like, if you kind of want to play both sides, I feel every game I've ever played that has an alignment system just straight up punishes you for trying to walk the middle line. Here you'd be bad at a little bit of everything. It's not as extreme as KOTOR 2, which straight up said you're not allowed to have a prestige class if you're gray. But yeah, the balance and the interest in, like, that's the mechanics of the dark side, light side thing. The fun of it comes from the fact that you might still want a healer in your party, and your party member's full good side. So you now have to balance your interactions with them, maybe leave them on the ship when you want to get some dark side points, for instance, and then have them join later on. But there'll be story beats where they just straight up disagree with what you're going to do, and you might lose your party member for good. They walk out on you. They're not gonna blow up that planet.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. Maybe has a little bit more leeway than, say, Mass Effect, which is fresh in my mind after that re-release. But, well, I guess time will tell. I want to just see some damn gameplay. Is that so much to ask for?
No. No. It would have been a superior experience than circling around Revan with lines we've never heard before. Like, it's a frustrating reveal for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was something we already knew about. It had been essentially leaked via Jason Schreier, of all people, I believe. But I had completely forgotten about it. So when this debuted, I was like, oh, damn, yeah, I forgot about that. And then the question started where I'm like, wait, Aspyr and all of these things that we've talked through now started just firing off in my brain. But, I'm cautiously optimistic. It's a game I really, really want to play. So I would say my bar is probably actually pretty low. If it looks halfway decent, this is something I'm definitely gonna jump into. But I still have my concerns. But we'll have to see. Anyways, let us know your concerns. Write into itncast@gmail.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below. And that's going to do it for this edition of Nexus Gaming News. If you like the show, you want more of this, make sure you like and subscribe if you're viewing this on YouTube. And if you're listening on your podcatcher of choice, we are broken off of the Into the Nexus feed. We are our own new podcast. So it is very, very important that you go out there and subscribe on your podcatcher of choice. That would help us out an absolute ton. And let us know how you're liking this show. But that's going to do it for this edition. Until next time, good luck and have fun, everyone.